Hello and welcome. You're listening to Start Again with Shauna Lee, the place where you will be reminded that it's never too late and you're never too old to do the damn thing. So stick around if you're ready to vibe higher and be inspired to chase your dreams. Together, we will uncover your soul's truest desires. Now, if you're ready, let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Today, I have a new friend to introduce you to. Christine Fonner is joining me, and thank you, Christine, for being here today.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
I am excited for us to get to know one another, but also for you to introduce yourself to my audience. The first question I like to kick things off with is, obviously, who are you and where are you coming from, what your business is, but also specifically, how have you embraced this idea of starting again?
Yeah, so I am an executive leadership coach for women, and I've spent 20 years in leadership development and team building. And so, I have a master's in change management and transformational leadership. I used that for many years. And then I've been working on my PhD the last few years, and I had a job at a university as the director of a program for management and leadership. So I was in charge of 10 courses, 40 professors, and about 60,000 students ran through the program.
Amazing.
On a monthly basis. And so at that time, I was building really amazing programs and working with some really cool projects. And I filed a Title IX against an executive director.
Oh.
And I spent 6 months fighting in that Title IX case, and I won. Yay me. And a month later, I was part of a mass layoff.
Oh, no.
And so that embracing the start again has been a real journey, right, for me, that
For
I had
sure.
I had this career and I was doing some really amazing things. But here's the deal and when you asked me this question, I was thinking, like, what was the big deal? And the big deal is I spent 20 years building a career around other people's businesses, around helping other businesses thrive for leaders that may or may not have cared about its people, right?
Yep.
And so I feel like now the starting again for me has been all about the alignment of my personal and professional self, my spiritual, strategic self.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And my career to what I'm really good at and what I'm really passionate about, and how am I going to do that?
That's amazing. I personally resonate so much with that because while different industry, I spent 20 years in corporate America doing the same thing, trying to focus and hone in my skills, but I was doing that in a way to build a career, but essentially was helping other people get rich. And I felt personally very unfulfilled in the way I was going about, earning a living. And so that alignment you talk about is what I also have spent the last few years kind of honing in and figuring out, wait, what is an alignment with me? What is my soul calling me to do? How do I continue to access those skills and help other people? So I love to hear that you have found a way to do that. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your business?
Yeah. So a couple of years ago, I started fully working in my own space, my own business, and I do executive leadership coaching for women. I do business consulting for organizations that are struggling with communication, conflict, mediation. And I've also created a women's adventure and leadership community. So a lot of the coaching that I do incorporates outdoor and nature-based educational theories, transformational learning theories, and so we have a women's community as well that you get to come and do deep dives into learning and do that with other women. So that community is also a big part of what I do.
I love that. I was taking a look at your website actually, and you are also doing retreats on the weekend. And I think do you have one coming up soon?
Yeah, our next one is coming up in August in Seattle. It's a deep dive into leadership strategy and also wellness. So we combine, I had mentioned that alignment is so important. So we combine mind, body, spirit, past, present, future with who we are personally and professionally. And so we get to come together for a whole weekend and spend time with an expert team, including myself.
Mhm.
And we get to spend some time really reflecting on where we're at in our lives, where we're going, and what that really means in terms of who we are and how we interact with the people in our worlds.
I think that's such important work. It's so beautiful. I think that's the connection that most people are struggling to find is how they find that alignment with who they are. And I think people have a very good idea of who they are and what's important to them and what has them feeling fulfilled. But how do you marry that with your profession and your career and making a living in this 3D reality that we're in? Like, how do you bring those two together? Which it sounds like that's exactly what you're doing in that community.
Right, Shauna. And the thing that's really interesting about being a leadership expert, right, is that I start with the whole person. You start personally and then you move to professional. And
Yep.
I think, when I talk about being a leadership coach or doing leadership workshops or doing leadership retreats, a lot of times women will say, oh, well, that's not me, or oh, that's not where I'm at, or oh, but this is the thing is you always start with that reflective space of spiritual self
Yes.
in order to be engaging in your leadership practice.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's amazing. Well, so when you look back at your journey and kind of how you got to where you are today, what inspires you most about your story?
Man, it was a real meander.
Isn't it always, though?
The path is not clear. It's not a straight
It's
line.
not a straight line.
I think the big thing for me is I've always been adventurous. I've always stepped off the path. I've always taken those calculated risks. But I think it wasn't until I got older and I feel like I spent a lot of my life in survive mode.
Yep.
I grew up really poor. I grew up with a lot of challenges in my family and in my daily life, and the getting out of poverty and getting out of these cycles of familial and generational issues. I was in survive mode for a long time.
Hmm.
And then there's a point where I realized I was heading into thrive. And so
Yes.
that's, I think, the most inspiring part about my story is recognizing that someone like me,
Yep.
someone who is tenacious in survival, can be joyful
Yeah.
in thriving.
Yeah. That's incredible. Yeah. I think that the moving from survival mode to thriving is the big win. And people are looking for the dollars. I think it's when you make that transition, the money follows, but it's the real win is moving into this sense of thriving in your day-to-day life. That's amazing. And you're teaching other people how to do that.
Yeah, well, and I was the other day I was talking to somebody in a mediation training, and I said something to the effect of, "Listen, I need you to remember that this is not an emergency. You're just uncomfortable."
Yes.
And I feel that way about life a lot of times. We are constantly in this emergency status when really you're just uncomfortable. And so, can we move from this survival mentality of, and look, sometimes we are surviving,
For
right? Like I
sure.
had to stand in a cheese line and I had
For
to
sure.
pay bills and but ultimately, if you can recognize the space for thriving, oof, that's where it's at.
Hmm. Hmm. I love how you say that, though. You're just uncomfortable because I've noticed this recently with a lot of people. It's this deep desire to not be uncomfortable that has people kind of stuck in whatever situation, place they find themselves. And it's just because they're afraid to be uncomfortable. And one
Yeah.
of my friends told me recently, like, I'm really impressed you're just sitting in this space of being uncomfortable. And I'm like, listen, I don't like it, but I've learned not to shy away from it. I lean into it now and ask more questions, and I try to observe and have less judgment, which for myself is a challenge. Um, and just be okay with being uncomfortable because my favorite thing to say is, this too shall pass.
Yeah. And being a my master's is in transformational leadership. I wholeheartedly am a transformational leader. And the whole point of transformation and transformational leadership and this whole idea around really thriving, you have to be uncomfortable. I've built my whole business around helping women be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And it's so joyful to me because it's helping women fully step into what's actually possible. It's super cool stuff.
It's super cool stuff because that's where their power really is.
Absolutely.
I love how you just laughed because, yeah, it is joyful for you. Like you can see it and you can hear it. That's awesome. So, when you look back on your journey, what do you think is the common theme in each of your lessons?
This is a great question. This is a fantastic question because I realized a few years ago. So I have tattoos, and I was looking back at like all my tattoos, and I have a few. And I've always known I tend to get a tattoo when I realize I am no longer the person I was the day before. So
Oh,
they're
I
they're
love that.
phase driven, right? So I
Yeah.
know that I have these tattoos that are like, oh, Christine, you are so different than what you were yesterday. That is a life phase moment.
Yeah.
And then I mark it with a
Yeah.
tattoo. What I
I love that.
realized what I realized a couple of years ago though is somebody else pointed this out to me when I was at a pool party. All of my tattoos have something to do with control. Loss of
Mm.
control, perception of control, relationship to control. So
Mm.
all of my life moments have been moments of recognizing different understandings around control in my life.
Mhm. That's really insightful. And well, I think for anyone who's moving out of survival mode, it is that ability to let go of being in control at all times, which is the key. So that totally makes sense. I
Yeah.
love that.
Well, and one of my first tattoos was when I realized I got out of poverty. I had gotten myself to university after 2 years
Mhm.
of junior college, and I realized I was out of poverty. That was my first one, right?
Mhm.
That money doesn't have control over me, or lack thereof doesn't have control over me
Yep.
anymore. And the second one I got was when I got E. coli in New York
Mm.
City. So I was in New York City. I was working in the Bronx, and I got E. coli and I almost died, and I survived. And
Yeah.
that was the second one. So, and there's all these really like these moments where something was overcome
Yeah. Yeah.
that I had no
I'm
control over.
I'm sitting here, I'm like reflecting on my own tattoos and have I done that? That's very interesting. I'll have to spend some time thinking about that. I also love tattoos. I don't know that I've ever gotten them necessarily at a phase or feeling like I'm a new person, but when I look at each of them, oh yeah, that's totally the same. Like when there was something to be celebrated about where I am today, it was almost like as I learn a lesson, I'm like, oh yeah, I think it's time for another tattoo. And now I'm just addicted to them.
Yeah, it happens. It's an
That's what
adrenaline junkie thing.
I tell everyone. I'm like, be careful if this is your first one because they're addictive. You'll want more. And everyone's like, no, I just get the one. I'm like, mm-mm, they all
Yep.
do. So, okay, my next question is by far the favorite question that I ask all of my guests because such wisdom and knowledge comes out of this. And there's kind of these common themes and threads through them, but I love to hear all the various answers. So, when you think back to the younger you, what advice would you give her?
Oh, this is a great question. I really love those internal family systems as we grow older and you go back
Mhm.
and you like love your little Christine self,
Yes.
right? I gave little Christine a lot of love for a few years in
Yeah.
therapy, which I think is so important. Everybody should do that, by the
It's
way.
a whole thing.
Go
Yes.
go
I
love your
fully
little self.
the inner child healing is a thing for a reason. And yes, everyone needs to go to therapy.
And she was a cool kid, man. So it was really
Yeah.
fun. It's fun to go back and love on little Christine.
Yeah.
The advice I would give her though, you got this, girl. Your
Yeah.
voice matters and you
Yes.
are making impact. When I was younger, I always used to say, I feel like I'm supposed to be somebody. I feel like I'm supposed to be doing something big. But there's a voice inside me that said, no, you're not, you're not that important. Or, oh no, nobody's gonna hear you. Right. Or,
Hmm.
oh no,
Hmm.
like why you? Why you and not this person? Why are you more special than her? And so I want to go back and tell that person, tell that little Christine, you got this. Your voice matters. You are making impact and you are somebody.
Yeah. See, I told you such wisdom. That's amazing. I love that. I love that. Okay, so this is a new question I am asking this season that I didn't ask last season, and uh, almost unanimously the answer is the same. But for shits and giggles, let's ask you: what do you now believe is possible for your own life?
We mentioned it. We mentioned this a little bit earlier, and it's so simple, but for human beings, it's so hard. And what's possible for me? Joy. Joy, the simplicity of fully being joyful.
Yes,
100%.
yes,
That's it.
I
We're
love
we're
it.
not evolved enough as humans. Like, we continually look for threat. We look for a lack of safety.
Yep,
And it's so hard for us to just be joyful.
hmm, it is. Agreed. That is a new answer. Maybe my new favorite answer. I love that.
Yes. I'm not competitive, but I'll take it.
It's not a competition, but I do love that answer, and it's really true. It's really true. Um, so my last question feels a little quick to get to, so I do want to ask that one, but I just want to ask if there's anything else that you would like to leave my audience with. Anything about your business, your call to action, how can people engage with you? It's kind of how can people find you is my last question, but want to give you an opportunity to share whatever else is on your mind and your heart.
Yeah, if there's anything that somebody can learn from being part of my community and being part of what I do, it's that going out into nature and really connecting with your five senses and doing it for 3 minutes, just 3 minutes, changes your entire physiological being. And so if you can get out and do something in nature, it's huge. And
Hmm.
so for me, I combine that with knowing getting out of your comfort zone is important. That learning about yourself is super important. So adventure is another way that's incredibly important to engage with yourself. And so if there's anything I can encourage anyone to do today, it's to look at my upcoming events and come with me on an adventure.
I love that. Well, and I also love how you make adventure sound fun. I
We
am.
talk about we talk about type 1 and type 2 fun in
Uh-huh,
adventuring. So
uh-huh.
I'm an avid mountain biker. I've ridden my bike on many continents and many countries. I've done a lot of really cool things. And the thing is that sometimes we call it type 2 fun. Like, I love mountain biking, right?
Uh-huh.
It's so fun to go out onto trail, see the birds, look at the sky, ride my bike, feel the energy of it. But I've also ridden my bike for 9 days straight. And that's type 2 fun. That type 2 means it's not really fun,
Yeah.
but the accomplishment of what you experience and the uniqueness of your experience caused you to learn so much about yourself and what you're capable of. And the connections you made with other people while doing that
Hmm.
is
Hmm.
life changing. And when you cross that finish line and you realize what you did, you immediately sign up to do it again. That's type 2 fun. And I
I
love convincing people to do that.
to do type 2 fun. You would have a little bit of a challenge convincing me. I like that meme that says I'm outdoorsy, I drink cocktails on the patio. Like
We do some of that too sometimes. In January, I do a beach getaway in Matagorda, Texas. And we get to do yoga on the beach, we get to do birding, and we get to hang out at the beach house. Like, we do a bit of all of it.
now, where are you located?
Yeah, great question. I split my time between the Gulf Coast of Texas and Southwest Colorado in the mountains. So
Okay.
I'm living the good life.
I love it. Well, we will have to connect at some point when you're in Texas. I am in Texas as well.
I
Um,
would love that.
yeah, that would be super fun. Um, yeah, this idea of adventure and challenging yourself. And to me, I think adventure has always sounded like really hard athletic things that I'm not interested in doing, like the idea of riding a bike for, what did you say, 9 days, 6 days? Sounds horrible to
9.
me.
Yeah.
9 days, yeah. But I get the concept of connecting with other people and challenging yourself and accomplishing something you didn't think was possible. I'm behind fully all of that, mostly for other people.
There's something for everybody. I
There
always say,
is.
just spend 10 minutes on the phone with me, and I'll talk to you about shenanigans. We'll just find something.
Shenanigans. I love it. I love it. Well, I am reluctant to end our conversation because it has been a pleasure to get to know you. Thank you for being one of the very first people to respond to my request and to jump on the phone with me virtually to tell my people about your people.
Oh, it's been such a pleasure. I'm so grateful. Thank you.
Yes. Well, we will definitely be in touch. And my last question, because I like to ask this verbally, even though I will provide all of the links that you gave me in the show notes, verbally, in case somebody is stopped in traffic as they're listening to our podcast and want to click on over to social media, where can they find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me at Roam, ROAM, roamyoursoul.com. If you're interested in the coaching, it's just roamyoursoul.com/ Christine Fonner coaching. And then I have a podcast as well where I get to highlight amazing stories from amazing women in leadership. And that's the Executives Lounge. And you can find that on Apple and Spotify.
I love it. I love it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time today, and it has been a pleasure.
Thanks, Shauna.
Okay, listen. Are you struggling to find what your true purpose really is? You should try journaling. At the very least, it will get you to a better feeling place than where you are right now. I've created a set of journal prompts to get you on your way to discovering who you truly are and where you want to go from here. My free download is called Journal Yourself to Joy, and it's available at shaunalee.com under Free Stuff. These are my tried and true journal prompts that will raise your energy, increase your positivity, and brighten your day. Download yours today.